Morning, everybody. Hi. This is another continuation of our CTO Tech Talks here at Gotham. I'm Ken Phelan, Gotham CTO, and we have with us Mike Phelan, not to be confused with Phelan, from Nutanix. Morning, Mike. How are you?
Good morning, Ken. Good morning, everybody.
So we're be talking a little bit about the hybrid cloud management space and some of the cool stuff Nutanix is doing there. But maybe, Mike, just give us a quick intro for like who you are and how you got into this space and what you do for Nutanix.
Sure. Thanks, and thanks for having me. Um, so I'm Mike Phelan. I oversee the field engineering function for Nutanix. We have about 800 engineers that work at the endpoint with customers and partners to make sure that we assemble the right technology to deliver the business outcome that people are looking for. Um, I've been here 3 years last week, and I was part of a new cohort of management that joined Nutanix back in late 2020, early 21. As there were changes at the board and really kind of a clean sweep of the top floor. Over that 3 years, we've restructured the business, made sure that we're driving profitability and we have a sustainable growth entity here. Turned the curve on that last year. And prior to my time at Nutanix, I was with VMware for 4 years in a strategy role, doing a lot of the acquisitions that VMware did in the late 2015 to 2020 period. And then prior to that, 16 years with EMC, and before that in the US Navy. So my entire career has been mission critical infrastructure. And the last 3 years have been exciting. Excitement can be good and bad, but it's been a wild ride. But we're on a really, really good course today. We feel confident about where we are, and we wouldn't be where we are if we didn't have the strong, robust partner ecosystem that we have with companies like yours. So we're eager to. I'm eager to get into it and see what people are interested in.
Cool. It has been exciting. We were just discussing before you got on that I said if February is as long as January was this year, I'm going to take a 10-month sababbatical. I'm going to just check out and check back in on January 1st, 2025. What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
10 months, how bad could things go? But January is a long month. But yeah, it's certainly been interesting times. And I think actually, maybe if you could just help me initially with this, because I kind of want to frame it. It's really interesting, you coming from like say the native EMC, but from VMware to Nutanix, and obviously there's a lot of comparisons there. But I think the space has evolved a lot, right? And we think about hypervisors and where we've come and multi-cloud, and I think like how do you see the space differently, evolving, and what how do you sort of define like it's not a data center OS, it's this, it's that. I mean, I get lost in the sauce a little bit, frankly, with the nomenclature that like whoever's making it up. I don't know the gods in the sky with Forrester or Gartner or whoever, but what do you think the space is, and what do you think, how do you think you guys fit into it?
Yeah. So there is no doubt that we will live in a multi-cloud world for the foreseeable future. It's, for as long as I've been in the business, you've been in the business, everyone's been in the business. Infrastructure architecture is really a function of, the application and regulation. And whatever changes between those two kind of drive infrastructure decisions. In the application space, we haven't seen an on-prem software company go public since 2008. So, applications are surfaced in the cloud. And then the nuance that I've seen over the last 24 months is that IT decision makers have become much more pragmatic about the regulatory environment, and they make assumptions that they're going to need to move data because of sovereignty controls, privacy controls, and just changing political landscapes. They're going to need to move certain types of data to certain places, depending on the regulatory environment. So we have an environment where most of the application logic is hosted somewhere off-prem, and a regulatory environment where customers are going to need to host private information either close to that application for performance reasons, in some other environment that they own and control for regulatory reasons, or most likely a combination of the two. Where do we fit? This company was founded on the principle of making web scale technologies accessible to enterprises. And the initial concept and focus area was on enterprise data services. That's important because as we live in a multi-cloud world, the ability to mobilize, protect, and govern workloads has become more important than it ever has been, right? So we're well suited for the environment today. And in addition to that, um, you know, I don't think that there's going to be anything in our lifetime that has the disruptive, both positive and negative effects of AI. So when we kind of boil down what an AI workload needs, it's really a high intensive IO environment with mass queries. So we find ourselves in a position where 13 years into the game, our technology, kind of technology foundation is very relevant to the problems of today and the next 5 years, mobilizing workloads and intensive web scale IO type architectures. In addition to that, we've always believed that IaaS can be commoditized. So we include a KVM-based hypervisor and microsegmentation between VMs as part of our stack. But stepping way back, no matter how you cut it, and we'll probably go to the next evolution, it's going to be a hybrid multi-cloud environment no matter what, right? You're going to have something on in your own data center, and then you're going to have cloud-based architectures all over the place because that's where the apps are, that's where the users are. And how you manage and govern that is really the trick. Our play there is that, we have a common fabric that can run anywhere, provide operational consistency. What that means is like policy, action, and governance. And it's, there's a lot of examples in history where a technology has been around, but it needed a couple other catalyzing events. And as we look forward, having the ability to mobilize, protect, govern data intensive workloads anywhere at any time in a common way is really the platform of the next 5 or 6 years. We've seen a lot of interest in that, and then I'm sure we'll get into it, but we also kind of got lucky with some other moves were made in the industry.
Yeah, I think there's like a lot of pent up. I mean, I don't know, not to be cynical, but there's a lot of pent up sort of need. It's sort of like this: the consumer is always left held in the short end of the stick, right? In the sense of, we all bought into Netflix, giving us everything for $15 a month, and now we've this and that and the other thing, and Peacock, and if you want to watch the game, you got to do that.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, we're all spending way more per month than we spent on cable and content 10 years ago. And I think the cloud kind of feels that way too, for a number of reasons that I think there's benefits we wanted in terms of agility. There's benefits we wanted in terms of resiliency and recoverability, and a lot of those are there. And I think the motion to SaaS that you brought up is, kind of moves a lot of burden where it belongs on the software writer developers. But I think from a customer perspective, I think there's just been particularly like an economic disappointment, right, with how this all works. And I feel like as customers, sometimes you feel like it's a knife to a gunfight because you're trying to, obviously Microsoft had a long-term play and Amazon had a long-term play, and they're trying to capture you and keep you and make you stuck. And I think, what do you think your role is in that environment? Just trying to get people to a place where no one's going to be super happy, but happier that they know they're making the right moves.
Yeah. I mean, our role is really, with that common data fabric to inform decision making by surfacing facts. These facts can be performance characteristics. These facts can be real-time cost data from the clouds. These facts can be anomalies in performance or malicious activity, but surfacing those facts in a dimensionally consistent way so that operators can make decisions. We provide options. And an observation I've made, to your point, Ken, about people have gotten into the cloud. And now that they're in, it's unlike Netflix. Your switching cost is different. Like you can't just cancel the subscription. You have proprietary information in there, and coming out is very expensive as well. An observation I have is, that change in cloud, it was kind of like a perfect, amazing storm for the public cloud providers, because they had an offer that really fit the market and kind of capital spending trends in the Western world over the last few years. There's been this overarching narrative in the Western economies about shifting from CapEx to OpEx. And you play that out over a decade, as it has been. And Western economies right now, when they look to make big moves, when they're looking at the potential of AI and that they have to go, right? They have to go, and they have to go quickly. I've noticed in Western economies, they just don't have the options that I see in the global South and other places where there was and still is excess capital spending. So, if you visit Taiwan, I was there last week. There's just a tremendous amount of capital spending, and customers there are much less likely to get in the cloud in the first place. So, I think it depends on where you started, the operating environment in which you were in, where the applications were quickly surfaced on public clouds. You're in a spending environment within your firm where there might be excess operating expense and really hard to get your hands on capital to build and deploy a new data center. So as we sit here today in the West, almost no companies in the private sector have broke new ground and are laying new floor tiles for data centers in the last 36 months. And I think that there are limits there. That's bound to change. I think that CapEx to OpEx is a bit of a fashion, and we'll see that come back. We have seen capital spending improve. But regardless, our role is to provide options, and those options can help you get into the cloud faster if you want to, and out of the cloud faster if you want to. And I lay that whole backdrop because in capital intensive, cost sensitive environments like India, what I see when I'm there is a lot of repatriation, a lot of let's pull it out and bring it back on-prem. We have the room, and there's a cost delta. And I operate in a mass, like a big 700 million internet users a day, this big environment that's very cost sensitive. And 50 points of margin, I'm going to move it. So when I'm over in India, I see a lot more workloads coming out, and I really suspect that up in New York or where I am out west today, if our customers really had a magic wand, they'd start pulling it back because of the control and predictability you get on-prem. I mean, we play Switzerland in that regard, but we do surface facts that help you make decisions. And the facts tend to say you're going to run your IaaS layer much more efficiently on Nutanix because we drive higher utilization between traditional towers like storage, compute, and network. And we tend to drive higher utilization and better cost characteristics in the cloud as well. So I think that we can offer a pretty sustained value prop to our customers. And we really want to be clear that we play at that modern progressive IaaS substrate layer, a software fabric that can run anywhere. And, as we get into PaaS and like decomposed microservices, we partner there. We look to companies like Gotham to assemble best of breed solutions for our customers so that, we can focus on where we're good and bring this ecosystem together. Because as we look forward, everything almost everything that we're going to be talking about is an ecosystem type play.
Yeah, I certainly agree that there's this concept. Well, first of all, I think there's just a learning curve. Let me just add that I think a lot of people moving legacy stuff to cloud had to undergo a huge maturity issue just because they really didn't have the kind of asset controls, automation processes. They weren't ready. You couldn't just move it up there because it was frankly just too old school, right?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of how the kind of controls and systems and operations they had around it. So they really had to grow doing that. And like having cost controls, the things you're talking about,
Yeah.
those elements of like, what are we really doing? How much CPU am I really getting, utilization? Because now that I'm paying for those resources, they're a lot more dear to me. And
Mm-hmm.
I start to learn a lot more about what I am actually needing in terms of CPU and disk and all that. People have gotten a lot better at that. Actually, I would just say, arguably, storage, we kind of had our act together a little bit in data center, but all the rest of it was a mess.
Yeah.
So I think we've learned a lot, and having learned a lot, we're like, hey, you know what? I could bring this back in a lot more effectively now with these tools. With this I can now auto scale in my own data center. I can do this, I can do that. So I think there's a lot of good like workload motion, a lot of things we've learned that kind of do make it come back. But I think it's really also points to this sort of, if you talk to people, and again, I think that's what I'm kind of saying. I think this whole conversation is great because I think people are a little bit lost in this, but I would just think there would have been a sort of a standard strategy, you know, 3 to 5 years ago of we're going to sort of lift and shift our VMware stuff, but we're really going to get cloud native and we're really going to cut that layer out. And we don't see ourselves, needing any kind of hypervisor, that's where the stage is going to be, right? We're going to cut that layer out.
Yeah.
And I think to your point, it comes back to this issue of agility, getting back out of the cloud, being truly hybrid, being multi-cloud. And people sort of, they say that thing, but I think when I say they, I mean maybe C-suite kind of people.
Yeah.
When you talk to people who are actually trying to create an economically viable program that moves quickly, I'm not sure everyone believes in that. So do you think there's a, first of all, is agility is the lemon worth the squeeze in terms of juice worth the squeeze in terms of like having that extra layer, doing that stuff? How do you show the economics on that?
Yeah.
And then do you think that that's a motion people are moving back towards? Because obviously, if you talk to Amazon, you can go to Amazon in Vegas in December, and they're going to explain to everybody that they really just need to be Amazon front to back. And then Microsoft will say the same thing. Every cloud provider is busily trying to convince you to get native.
Mm-hmm.
So in that backdrop, I mean, how do you continue to talk about the need for this middle tier?
Yeah. Well, I think that I'll talk a little bit of today and tomorrow. I think that there's been this stasis about moving forward to microservices or kind of holding on in one way or another. And you can hold on to legacy infrastructure in a variety of ways. One way is to kind of move that legacy infrastructure en masse into the cloud by moving your VMs. We allow you to do that. And VMware has done this as well with VMC. And I saw both things kind of take shape more for migration, DR, like swing capacity types of use cases. Customers have been hesitant to kind of move everything up and run the old on the new for a bunch of reasons that you kind of illustrated there. But as I look forward, I think that there are a couple new factors in the ecosystem that we really need to consider. One is 80% of those VMs, it's a fact, they are run on Broadcom software. And customers are really they're starting to get a taste of like renewal bills, and Broadcom's recipe in the business is very well known. The recipe for VMware is well known because they had to publish it to get shareholder approval for the acquisition. And so enterprise customers know that they have risk in this estate that they didn't have 18 months ago. So all of a sudden there's like a case for change around the VMware estate, which makes up most of an enterprise data center. The second thing is there's a new possibility here with AI that just hasn't. I think that the thing with AI is we're having a hard time really internalizing how fast it's moving and how big it is. Like, think of all of us on the phone. I know the first time I used ChatGPT, I burst out laughing. It was like I saw a magic trick, right? And you do that, and now we just call it software. And this is happening in AI. Like, the innovation engine is happening faster than anything we've ever seen. Humans have a hard time understanding exponential gains. And I was with an airline last week, a large airline, and they had turned on large language model for customer service, and their call volume and their call centers dipped 50% within 30 days. 50 within 30 days. And they mentioned that, and I said, "What are you doing with the money?" Didn't even think of it. It's happening so fast that they didn't even think that we should scrape that call center money and invest in more AI, because we've never seen something like this, right? So I think enterprises have these kind of dual things here, where we've got a case for change on legacy that we hadn't had before, right? And we have this forward-looking capability that is not optional. And the ROI here is unlike anything we've ever seen. You're talking about productivity enhancements of 30, 40, 50% instantly. So you can't ignore those, right? So you put those two things together, and there's a stronger case for what we would call maybe full modernization, where I start to think about microservices apps as normal. I start to think about bare metal computing, and I start to realize multi-hybrid cloud in a much more tangible way, leveraging Kubernetes and this ability to kick up, spin up, and drive compute and functional, infrastructure-based functions based on dynamic loads that are going to happen based on business conditions. So I do see this third state, like today, maybe it's like people are in denial, then they're in bargaining. Maybe I can do a little bit of it, right? And then there's kind of internalization and forward looking. And in my role, I get the benefit of visiting customers throughout the world all the time. And I'm seeing more and more of that third mode of like, well, we're just going to need to, we're going to start rethinking everything. Because if we were wondering how we're going to save money to invest in this, the answer is clear. It's artificial intelligence. There are distinct use cases that every vertical industry has started to pick up. So you know where to start. The question is, how fast do you start? And then how quickly can you move from one use case to another? And I think that that's going to really define success of the enterprise and government agencies moving forward. And I think that, first of all, I know that we're thinking about that too. We're going to play this intermediary role around helping you reduce risk in your business by an easy way to slide off of Broadcom. And then we must, speaking strategically here, we must continue to be much more aggressive, acquiring IP that makes this transition simple, seamless, and fast. So, over the 3 years I've been with the firm, step one was kind of make sure the business is working correctly. Are we earning money, kicking off free cash? Check. Step two, evaluate the portfolio and start to leverage our balance sheet for acquisitions. The first act we took was acquiring a company called D2IQ in December. And what we needed there was just, you could think of it like almost like acquiring talent. But they fit a very unique place. They have a distribution, and every enterprise gets to a place where, your developer side of the house starts to get big, really big. and you do not have the governance, controls, and policy in there that you do in IT. And typically what happens, and I'm speaking from experience here, I have a developer landscape that some of you may use called the HPOC. And it gets so big over time, you come back, maybe the first day you get hit with a 0 day or something like that. It's a bit of a wake-up call. And you start looking at your assets, the software you're using, all of this stuff that we take for granted as IT professionals. But in the modern, like, developer part of our shop, we haven't addressed it. Well, D2iQ kind of lives right in the middle, where they speak both sides. Their distribution's assembled in just a way so that both sides of the community can relate to the Kubernetes distribution, the terminology, and the way that we do things in a modern world. And, you know, it's important for us to get a couple hundred engineers into R&D that just bring that kind of Kate's experience into the business. So that was kind of step one. Step two will be about making modern apps much more accessible. And that might mean tool sets or tool chains that allow you to kind of look at a monolithic app and turn it into runtime packages that can be distributed and actioned by Kubernetes in an easy way, also used for debugging. Step three will be about, you know, making sure that we secure that pipeline of capabilities so it can be a steady state operation. And then step four is looking at our own native stack and saying, you know, the stack of the future is much more of a on-demand kind of real-time assemble my stack world, right? And how do we think about our core stack at Nutanix in a world like that? Now, we have some inherent benefits in that switch just because of our core competency around the data, but there's certainly some work for us to do in thinking about how enterprise data services are going to be surfaced, what the requirements are, as everybody starts to move to a more modern type of computing environment. So long answer to your question, but I mean, that's what we see, like the competing forces and how we'll move forward within them.
Yeah, I think it's hard because I think, listen, I mean, we've got a whole, you could almost call it a generation of people, the technical side, on the technical infrastructure side, that have made their living and gotten promotions and lived their whole career inside VMware,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Going from hypervisor save money to this, that, like just riding this VMware train. And they all have VMware tattoos. And
Yep.
so, and I think Broadcom's a lot of things. They might be mean, they probably are mean, but they're certainly not dumb in the sense of, you know, sometimes you come to a customer with a technology and you're like, here's a better technology. And they say to you, even if you gave it to me for free, I
Mhm.
couldn't afford to move to it.
Yeah.
Right. And I think you said this, like we're really focusing on how to make the transition appropriate. And I think there's two jobs, right? One is how do we get the transition to happen in an
Mhm.
effective way that doesn't break the bank and is effective for the company. And maybe there's some stages, maybe there's structures, maybe it's part of the
Yeah.
process. And then I think the other side is how do we create this long-term vision of, you know what? This really is going to be the right platform for you 5, 7 years out, because we know that the investment to get here is going to you have to really feel like this is going to be the right move a decade from now, because the cost of motion, the cost of making this thing,
Yeah.
like you've got to believe in the platform. No one's going to move to Nutanix or anything else for that matter, thinking that this is a 2-year band-aid till I get on Amazon, right?
Uh-uh.
So you got to put this. So I think those are the two problems, right? If you can, give me a little more depth on how the change happens without
Yeah.
driving me crazy, and
Yeah.
then and I think you did talk specifically about the app side, but I think I think Nutanix has some sort of brand building to do about like, yeah, you know what, we really can be this player in the industry, and we really will be here 7 years from now.
We certainly do. And it's important that we do the brand building on apps and microservices in a way that's consistent with who we are, right?
Right.
And who we are, we're a company that tends to make those things accessible. And the word that gets used a lot with Nutanix is simplify, right? We make it easier to do it. So whether we call it a tool chain or a pipeline, the characteristics of our modern platform of the future are going to be the same as the modern platform 5 years ago, where it's simple, easy to use, and easy for operators to relate to. In this stage one, the benefit we provide of coming off of Broadcom is just quick move. Like there's high P included in the stack. It's called move. You want to migrate from ESX to AHV, it's in there. And what the business benefit there is it allows customers to advertise the switching cost over a period, over many years, right? Because to your point, every VMware shop is going to have people that have been on VMware their entire careers, right? And that's an expression of the switching cost, right? Like a team that has like deep skills, right? Tools integrated with operations for 2 decades, right? It's marbled in. So it's not like something they're going to do next week, but it's something that they want to start on tomorrow. And the benefit we give them is like, you can start this move, expand over time, and advertise that cost of change over many years. Because we believe that most places will take 5 years. And that squares with a lot of the decision makers I speak with. They tend to use a number a little shorter, like 3 to 5. And I think it's going to be hard. For a big enterprise at scale. But what's different this time is most enterprises, they have experience kind of kicking the can with the mainframe, and that bill is due like right now. And they have learned that if we don't get off early, we end up in a place where we're held hostage by a single vendor, held hostage by our workforce, and held hostage by like the limitations of functionality, like our inability to move in this space, which happens to be like where a general ledger, all these key business applications are. Like the cost of pulling that anchor around is massive. And I've been surprised on how many customers actually reference the mainframe when they talk about Broadcom. So they're drawing these associations on their own. And that's all of those things are informing like, let's move forward quickly. And I think that more and more they'll get past that bargaining and start to think about their computing environments in a much more modern way. The limitation they have is that everyone has is the skills to do it. That's why we're thinking about IP that makes that less of a factor.
Right. Yeah. I do have to state, like, just as a small commercial for you guys, one of the things I like about you, what the customers who have bought Nutanix actually get the tattoo. Like you are one of the
Yeah.
technologists say, like, since the people who have you like that, and that's a positive thing because that's not universally true about infrastructure software for sure.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think going back to this, so we're talking this 5 year thing. I mean, but like give I guess some of the questions that pop into my mind are what are the steps? Like, what's a good first step? How do you, if you were looking at this and thinking about it from the, how do I sort of, POV is not, I'm not going to sit in a lab, but like, I'm going to pick some wins, right? Kind of get
Yeah.
some points on the board and think
Yeah.
about, start to walk down that road.
Yeah. So great question. And it is where all these conversations ultimately land is like, where do we start? And if you know Nutanix, and you guys do, there's a good place for us to start in 9 out of 10 enterprises. Over the last, 4 years, we've seen everyone's VDI landscape grow. And, they're in this like position where they have a large estate on VDI. There's cost benefits from either moving it to modern infrastructure or moving it to DAS. They're hesitant on DAS because of the cloud conundrum that you talked about earlier. If I get in, it's Hotel California.
Yep.
So what I find is like if we're walking into a large enterprise, what's the good place for enterprise, good place for Nutanix? Like where are these lines going to meet in a place where we're going to have mutual success and establish like a foundation for moving forward? It's almost always going to be VDI because we are really good at it, right, as a company. It's just something like every one of my people, I can start talking about VDI and they just run. Like, here's exactly how we'll do it. Here's the cost benefits. Here's what you're going to get. Here's how you're going to operate. Like, it's deep institutional knowledge, even though we don't manufacture or deliver the software. It happens to be a compute environment that grew in an unplanned way over COVID. So customers are looking for alternatives. It's really the safest place to start, right? And outside of that, I can't give an answer because it requires like customer input and our decision making. But I do guide our team and ask, I share the same guidance, right? Um, we want to start in a place where we know both sides are going to win. We don't want to pick the most mission critical mixed workload IO intensive database that's high risk for them, high risk for us. Like, let's start somewhere that's safe because we believe that it's a multi-year opportunity, right? We believe this. And all of the evidence has continued to support that thesis. So treat it like that, right? Let's find something that we're both going to win. Don't get greedy, right? And just trust that we are fortunate, right? I joined this company because there was two things: passionate customers, solid core code. And I'm like, if you got those two, you can do anything, right? Everything else is everything else. But if you have those two, you can do anything. If you're missing one or the other, you're in trouble. And we just have to trust that as we bring more customers into the family, and we do get about 500 or 600 companies that join the Nutanix family every quarter, that we get more, we start to build out that ecosystem of passionate users who talk to other users and help everybody get in the boat. And then it's our job as a company to say, here's where we're going. And where we're going is we're going to deliver value for you today by making it simple and easy to use, providing that alternative to Broadcom that hedges risk, gives you predictability, helps you mobilize workloads wherever and whenever you want, on-prem or in the public cloud. But we're thinking about the future, and we do believe that the game is going to be played in a much more microservices oriented. So, if the bell curve had, if most of an enterprise, like we plotted all their apps and infrastructure services on a bell curve, today, most of them are still going to be kind of like platform 2 or monolithic apps, like the old way of doing things. That bell curve is going to move. And there's really never been a bigger catalyst for change in infrastructure, with these two combining activities of like, a vendor that has their business strategies to buy entrenched competitors, eliminate R&D cost, eliminate service and sales cost, and then raise prices to $1 below switching cost. And that's really their business, and it works. It's great for shareholders, tough for customers. So you have this kind of case for change in legacy infrastructure. And then you have this forward-looking kind of killer app that's unlike anything we've seen in human history. So you put those two things together, the opportunity's never been bigger. And, it's going to be winners and losers are going to be really defined by the actions they take over the next 6 months. Can they identify that first use case on AI and get some competency with the models? Can they take the value that they've captured from that first use case and plow it into more forward-looking investments? Can they get nimble and fast by moving off of legacy 3-tier architectures, which straight up like have not changed in 25 or 30 years, straight up. Like, it's been incremental chipset improvements. That's it. right? The architectures are the same, front end, bus, bag of disks. So there's a case for change on the internal infrastructure side that hasn't existed in the previous 20 years, right? It's been all a series of incremental improvements. But looking forward, we're going to be living in an exponential world. And we feel pretty confident that we have the right recipe for today, and our thesis about tomorrow is correct. And the first evidence of that is really the way we thought about AI, where customers are going to have large language models in the cloud, proprietary large in the data center, compact models at the edge. It's okay. So where are we going to play? We'll start at the edge, because that's where we believe the end game is. And all of the evidence says that we're correct here, right? Now forward to computing and architecture. What used to be a two worlds problem, developers and infrastructure, that is going to be commingled quickly. So we want to make it easier for companies to start to access the modern services, rectify and remediate some of their cloud playgrounds, because that sandbox has become like the backyard now. And starting to think about how you mobilize computing or infrastructure assets to support applications in a multi-cloud world, because there is no doubt that that's what we're living in. That's what it's going to be for the next 10 to 15 years. And it's going to happen faster than we've seen ever in our careers, right? I mean, the innovation in AI is kind of a day-by-day change. We haven't seen it. We haven't seen things like this. So interesting times. Yeah, big waves of change.
Yeah, but I still think there are, yes, I think there are things, and we're seeing big change. Like, I think you kind of said something about this bell curve of software life cycle. And but at the same time, to me, it's the technical debt that holds us back, right? We're dragging this huge anchor, all of this stuff through us, and you're making the mainframe statement and all the other stuff. And I think, to me, the biggest success I've even seen sort of on the PaaS side has been greenfield, right? If it's new, we can do the right things, do the containers, do the microservices, and there's benefits to all that stuff. But the most of my large clients have a huge inventory of crap they've written over the years. It's very, they're not going to go back and recode all of it from microservices. I mean, in your mind, maybe they could, maybe they should, maybe, but people have just been lazy about the life cycle for software, and lazy is not the right word, pragmatic maybe.
Yeah.
And and so I think they're in that space. I think it's interesting that you kind of come at this from two angles when talking to you. So what I'm hearing is like, on the one hand, yeah, we're great at legacy stuff because we have hypervisors, we do that, we can do all that stuff, we live in that space. On the other hand, we're really focusing on, if you've got a greenfield AI thing you're doing, please talk to us, because we think we're the right multi-cloud platform for that conversation.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm putting words in your mouth, but I mean, I think that's a tough, that honestly, having both of those things at the same time is kind of a tough sell, but it sounds like that's what you're kind of claiming here as your space.
Yeah, it is. And it's to your point, for all of us, that value prop makes a lot more sense the further north you are in an organization.
Right.
Because there's, as you move up the ladder of technology decision makers, you have to get to the point where you have the person who's got the legacy problem around compliance, risk, and cost, and the opportunity around workloads of the future in AI. So, as you call up, I find that value prop is much more consistent with the priorities they have today. Remember, I've spent maybe a little too much time on forward-looking stuff on this call, but there's day one savings on legacy infrastructure by collapsing silos, providing modern operations, And there is no one in the industry that provides a common operating layer with the ability to intervene, to detect, intervene, stop, and surface decision making to recover quickly from ransomware. Like that is our killer app today, is showing here's how you would do it. Talking through any of the attacks that have happened over the last 5 months. It's never the attack, it's the way in which they recover that actually causes the problem. Because over the last 20 years, any enterprise has gone from 1,000 applications to 100,000. There's API strings everywhere. They have things working on multiple locations. It wasn't until it's not since, like, I go back to the beginning of my career where we kind of stepped through and developed recovery processes by business application and tiered apps. That is an impossible task today. So kind of long way around, if you had a common data fabric that could operate anywhere, that is the way that you're going to solve this dispersion problem of apps running everywhere. If that data layer was also integrated with your compute, like the other elements of infrastructure, in an intelligent and seamless way, you have the ability to monitor and protect it as one unit. That allows you to do things like detect a malicious actor, intervene and pause, surface a variety of snapshots to the operator so that they can take one and recover. We call that data lens. That is our killer app right now. And it gets lost in everything, but that's the one. Like, when we talk about that, it doesn't matter where we are in the enterprise, further north, the better. They're like, I want to hear more. I want to hear more. How do you intervene and stop a ransomware attack like right now? I want to hear more. And that's kind of like value that we surface today. It's also a way for us to start to access security budget line items, which are pretty, which, there's spending there. And customers need this. And it's also like, back to your question around where do we start? There are a lot of sensitive file-based workloads that get held hostage, and customers would really prefer, like, what would the MGM pay to be running on Nutanix last year, right? To just have a common fabric. Stop, pause. I think it's this file. What do you think? Click, done. It's not they paid the 15 million almost immediately, but they were down for 2 weeks because they started turning everything off in that period of time, and they couldn't get it to work again when they turned it all back on. So we have an elegant solution to those problems that our customers face today. We have proofs on the workload of tomorrow with large enterprises that have chose our platform for AI. And it wasn't all thought out. It just kind of worked out. And the other thing to remember with Nutanix is we're known a lot because of appliances. And that was a monetization strategy, not a technology strategy. There's nothing inherent in our code that says it must run on a box. But the company, when it went public 5 years ago, they needed to make money. So they started selling it on servers. And, you hear this narrative of Nutanix, like, started as appliance and software, now cloud. It was always cloud. They just put it on boxes to make money. So I just feel like it's important for all of us to internalize that the platform was always built with a run anywhere concept. Like, and these things are so important. Like, what was the original idea? Because they always have architectural considerations. The original idea was just an agnostic cloud platform that was easy for enterprises to use, and a way for them to get off of legacy 3-tier stores that they were paying a ton of money for. Those conditions are still present. And we can make the same pitch that we were making in 2016, and it's going to resonate. Like there's value there, but that platform's kind of had there have been a few other things that have kind of helped it come together and make it relatable to these mega changes, whether it be Broadcom or AI. And I think that that's why you see all of that reflected in financial performance and valuation, because people have come to recognize like, hey, this thing, it actually is kind of built for the future. And what's good for us, good for all of us, is it always was. Like there's no big changes here. It's just a shift of perspective.
Yeah, I think it's, as an engineer, I always said the way you tell, good engineering solves a problem, great engineering solves a problem you don't even know you have right now.
Yeah.
Right. And they weren't sitting around as they were writing the code thinking, okay, what about ransomware? But
Mm-hmm.
what they were thinking about was agility, structures,
Mm-hmm.
clouds, save spaces. Like, it's just, I think that, people who are like bolting on a ransomware fix, who don't have that sort of resiliency built in are kind of, and again, it's certainly valid to do those kinds of things. But at the same time, like, you want to look for those solutions, because the truth of the matter is this is today's problem. Tomorrow's problem is going to be tomorrow's problem, and neither of us know what it is.
Yeah.
That's the nature of the universe. Okay. Well, we're kind of wrapping up here. I usually stop because some people do watch us live, and I always want to give them a chance to ask some questions if they want. So if you maybe, I don't know if you guys can open the mics, or if you have any questions that you guys want to read out there in the chat or something like that from the people who are doing it. But is there anything, Mike, I didn't ask you that you wanted to talk about? I mean, obviously you just said whatever you wanted to say, so I don't think I restrained you very much. But was there anything that you kind of wanted to tack on the end of this?
I'll need to listen to the recording because I talked about a bunch of stuff. Coffee hit at the right time. It's earlier out here.
No, it's.
But
yeah,
no,
where actually are you? Where are you? You're out in California?
I am in Park City, Utah today.
There you go.
So, Mountain
Nice.
Standard. Yeah, good place to be there.
All right. Allie, do we have any questions from the group? You often don't.
Yeah, nope, nothing in the chat.
Perfect. All right. Well, Mike, I really appreciate your time today. This is a great conversation. I'm going to go back and listen to it again, too, because I think you had a lot to say. But I really appreciate it. And I think I certainly learned a lot. I hope our customers did. And I'm looking forward to keep working with you. And
well, look, it was a pleasure to join you, Ken. I don't think I've ever seen two Phelans in the same box.
There you go.
And it's good to talk to everybody on the phone, even though I can't see you. And I always enjoy my time with Gotham. So anytime there's a time for me to visit you, your customers, or be part of this, the answer is always yes.
Perfect. We appreciate the partnership. Well, thanks, Mike. Thanks, everybody, for putting together. Thanks, Allie, Kelly, and Jay for putting this together. And everybody have a great day. Thanks.